special back. He's a special human being, and I'm so happy he's on our side.
Yeah, let's play it again.
I mean, it's next man up. You put anyone back there, they're going to still get yards. But Donovan, he's a special back. He's a special human being, and I'm so happy he's on our side.
Sometimes the audio is so good, you want to play it twice. And that's what was happening right there. Welcome in. Good afternoon. Michigan football. I'm Dennis Fithian here on the Maize and Blue Review. It's great to be here on this Wednesday, the 7th of December. We'll be here for, I don't know, close to the next hour talking about Michigan football. We're here live weekdays at 1 o'clock talking about the latest in Michigan sports. And right now, that is football. Michigan, you know, they won the Big Ten, you may have heard, last Saturday, and it continues to be a gift that keeps giving. You wake up and you look back to this past Saturday and you're like, wow, back-to-back Big Ten championships for Michigan. And then you look ahead and you say, wow, Michigan's in the college football playoff semis on New Year's Eve at 4 o'clock. They're a heavy favorite against TCU. Oh, yeah, in the meantime, you know, you're going to have the early signing period and you're going to have some transfers and you got the portal to look at, you know, to bide your time while everybody else is looking at that. But there's only 4 teams left of the college football playoffs, and one of them are Michigan. And so that is the gift that continues to give for the Maize and Blue fans. I'm going to say it again. This is getting a little redundant, but congratulations to you out there that have stuck with the Wolverines through thick and thin. You've always waited for days like this, weeks like this, months like this, eras like this is what you hope for when you pledge your allegiance to the Maize and Blue. However long you go back and you've done that, you know, you're here and it has paid off for you. I don't know how it feels for you. You know, you can tell me how it feels for you. I want to tell you what we're talking about today. I've got a really important question for you. Before I get to that important question, I want to also tell you this important news about potentially knowing everything before everybody else when it comes down to the Michigan Wolverines. How do you do that? Well, you go to michigan.rivals.com and you sign up for the Maize and Blue Review. And if, you know, you're probably already on there, if you're smart yourself, or, you know, you're looking for a gift for that special Michigan fan in your life, giving the gift of the Maize and Blue Review this holiday season will go a long way for the Michigan fan in your life. Go to michigan.rivals.com. That is an absolute no-brainer. Make it happen. What are we going to talk about today? Well, Michigan lands an offensive lineman. We'll dive into that and tell you the particulars about the new Wolverine. There's been a lot of talk about the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. A big money NIL off season. I got a thought or two on that. But we're going to start with Donovan Edwards. But before that, you know, sometimes it happens. That is the breaking news sounder. We do have breaking news, and it comes from the Big Ten, and it comes from the team that Michigan just saw in the Purdue Boilermakers. Their head coach, Jeff Brohm, is heading back to Louisville. I say headed back because that's where he played his college ball. He is a legend in the state of Kentucky, in particular at Louisville, and he is leaving to become the new coach. That has just happened here in the last hour or so. Brohm was the QB there from 89 to 93. He had a 66-44 record at Western Kentucky and then at Purdue. 17-9 his last 2 years with the Boilers. Had those 3 top 5 upsets over the last couple years. Michigan State being one of those last year. Ohio State, Iowa on there as well. Brohm getting a deal that is being reported at 6 years in the $35 million range. So that's going to be different. We'll see who ends up going to Purdue. All right, here's the question for you Michigan fans out there, you college football fans. Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards is a sophomore running back. You saw him this past Saturday. He looked great. You also saw him against Ohio State in the horseshoe. He looked great. He had runs of 75 and 85 yards against the Buckeyes to drive. The first one I thought that's when, look, Michigan, they were in there. Like I was thinking, you saw 2016 it coming down to, overtimes and, you think about the officials, you think of all those things. But when that first one went for 75 yards, I thought, wow, Michigan's got a really good chance now to win this game. And then the 85-yard gallop by Donovan Edwards really put the when that happened, and I'm not somebody that's counting any chickens or feeling like something's over until the clock hit. It was over. That was the last nail. I was convinced at that point, although that first one I was feeling like Michigan was in pretty good shape, themselves. The 60-yard run that he had against Purdue, Jeff Brohm's former Boiler coach's team for the first play in the second half, was a real slick move right at the line of scrimmage. He set his guy up, kind of like Blake Corum. I don't know if these guys, they both have great moves, but that ability to set the defender up and juke him at the line and then take off. Donovan Edwards has consistently shown that. But, these are the two games where we've seen him, as the starter, although, they showed flashes last year, and he certainly has, teamed up with a Blake Corum, lightning and lightning, this particular season. And I don't know how many teams out there could lose their MVP, could lose the Heisman. I was going to say favorite, but I don't know. He was certainly in the mix, one of the Heisman front runners in a game against Ohio State, the number 2 team in the country. And then, just, I don't know, say plug him in, replace that quality of player and, just have him go off. It's not been not talked about, but it's one of those things that should always be talked about when you talk about this season. Certainly if you're talking about Michigan against Ohio State, certainly if you're talking about Michigan winning the Big Ten title, Donovan Edwards right there coming in and, picking up for Blake Corum, who he threw some love out to after the game up on the podium. All of that's good. So I ask you about Edwards. A lot of good things to think about when I ask you just how good he is. I'll read some of your feedback. I saw this from Pro Football Focus. They put a superlative up about Donovan Edwards from this past weekend. Edwards had 185 rushing yards. Pro Football Focus says Edwards had 145 of those yards after contact. That's good. The next best rushing leader from conference weekend was little Deuce Vaughn. I like him. I say little. He's a little back from K-State, who had 130 yards. If little Deuce Vaughn can get 130 yards against a porous TCU run defense, how many yards should we expect Donovan Edwards to get against TCU? Go ahead. 200, 300. I mean, somebody said 300. That sounds crazy just for a second until you look at what Donovan Edwards has been doing. Is it so crazy to expect 300 yards from Donovan Edwards? Because if you look at his last 2 games, 185, let's say measly yards against Purdue. Hell, he had 25 carries. But against the Buckeyes, if he can go for 216 yards against a top-ranked run defense in Ohio State on the road, how many yards should we expect Donovan Edwards to get in the semifinal? This guy is a starter, is averaging 200 yards a game. And now he's going against a great matchup for a running back at TCU. And no, do you really care how many yards Donovan Edwards ends up with against TCU? Not really. But could he go for 250? Absolutely, he can. You just look through his season here. Penn State had a pretty good run defense as well. And you remember in the second half when he came out and broke off that long one, he broke off one, Corum broke off one, and it really, just took the will from Penn State. And the defense, after giving up a first drive field goal, they slammed the door. And then, they would do it the rest of the season in the second half as well, against Michigan State, against Rutgers, against Nebraska, against Ohio State, and, pretty much against Purdue. Although Purdue, was able to get some points. They had 13 at the half, and they ended up with 22. So, Purdue actually did a pretty good job in the second half. But when you think about just how good Donovan Edwards can be, when we were sitting here all season long talking about Donovan Edwards and what a weapon he was, it was lightning and lightning. It was, the Penn State game, 16 carries, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns for Edwards. The 67-yard touchdown run that he had, it was, Corum with 28 carries and 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. Michigan had 418 rushing yards against the Nittany Lions. What did we keep saying about Donovan Edwards? Where he really shows, and we haven't even mentioned it yet. I've been talking about Donovan Edwards for close to 10 minutes now. Where Donovan Edwards really shows his mismatch ability and his skill set is in the receiving game. And there was no more bigger example of that than against Michigan State in the first half when Michigan went 4 wide and they ran Donovan Edwards straight down the middle of the field, and he was on a linebacker, and it was like taking candy from a baby because he just put a move on him. That linebacker had absolutely no chance at covering Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards could have cut in. In this case, he ended up going out. They threw the ball, and he zipped up the field for what looked like, 25, 35 yards. He can do that against Rutgers when Michigan, was down at the half, and they needed something in the passing game. Here was Donovan Edwards exploiting that mismatch down the left sideline. Here was Donovan Edwards in the back of the end zone, coming up with a pretty nice grab in the end zone. He is a real special back. The interesting part of talking about him is you just have to go back and say it again. Blake Corum was Michigan's MVP, and he was one of the front runners for the Heisman Trophy heading into the Ohio State game. He got hurt at the end of the first half against Illinois. Corum did. He toughed it out, went out for the first series against Ohio State. Enter Donovan Edwards. And you might as well have just taken a cape and thrown it out the back of that thing for the way that he has run since then. That's why sports are great. We all try to predict, this and that. And, Blake Corum going down the air, being sucked out of the building when that happened, thinking, oh, man, oh, no. And then, having Edwards do what he has done here. And he's just a sophomore. He's not going anywhere. He's coming back. Maybe he will be able to win the Heisman where, Blake would have, I think, had a really, I'll say great chance, good chance, pretty good chance, very good chance if it ran well against Ohio State, considering how everyone else did at winning the Heisman Trophy. Donovan Edwards will be right in that mix. Certainly all off season, I'll be talking about Donovan Edwards. If it's not Edwards, I might talk about the quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. So things are going really well for Michigan. This is not a very controversial show here today. This is not like let's get your feelings on all kinds of different crazy controversial topics. This is how good do you think Donovan Edwards can be? That is the question that I have posed out there to the people. Let's just see what the people are thinking about the question. How good is Donovan Edwards? And does he remind you of any other back? I put some comps myself together that I will get to in a moment. The coach leads us off, And he says the closest person Donovan reminds me of is Marshall Faulk. That is a pretty good comp for Marshall Faulk, one of the greatest linemen, or I'm sorry, greatest running backs in the history of football. Antoine says Michigan picked up a nice offensive lineman. We will get to that coming up straight ahead. And so we are going to be talking about that. If you saw the menu, Michigan did pick up somebody in the transfer portal. Michigan looking at the portal. They might be that portal's going to be big. Portal's busy for everyone. How you work the portal, who's coming, who's going. It's pretty important. Here's Steven, pretty measured listener, viewer of the Maize and Blue Review. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Steven says he's been saying for about 5 or 6 weeks that Edwards might be better than Corum, but he just wasn't a number one back yet. He seems like a number one back now, and a lot more of that from Steven. Eddie, Edwards is pretty damn good. Best back at Michigan since Mike Hart. I'll say he's the best back at Michigan since Blake Corum. Blake Corum, if Donovan Edwards puts together the kind of season that Blake Corum had this year, next year, he'll be a Heisman finalist. I mean, what are we talking about? So, yeah, those guys, the two of them, you could say best backs since Michigan Mike Hart. I think you might be onto something there talking about it, So, yeah. Jason indicating that Donovan has it all. A great runner and pass catcher. He's getting better every week, too. His ceiling is scary high. Yeah, it's a good point about his ceiling. Like we've only seen him start 2 games, and he's averaging 200 yards. And he really, that's. Can you see it in this picture that I have up there? Yes, you can. The thing to remember in that him, stepping right in at Ohio State and against Purdue, as he did it with one arm. He couldn't get out there. He's got a splint on his right hand. He's averaging 200 yards with just his left hand available for him. That is scary. So we don't know. What's it going to do with a healthy hand? Hopefully that hand is healthy over the next 24 days in that semifinal. And if not 100% healthy against TCU, maybe they only need a one-handed Donovan Edwards against TCU. You kind of feel like he's going to need 2 against Georgia, Kind of feels like that. But that's getting, I get ahead of myself. I do that. Logan is talking about featuring Donovan Edwards as a pass catcher with the cast. But that just shows you how effective he was as a runner. When the cast comes off, watch out. Richard, Dono is a superstar without a doubt. Sometimes the nicknames, like, they're pretty easy, and sometimes say, is there something better? But the shortened version of the Don or Dono, I'm in with Dono. I like that. It's short, it's sweet, and it works. Dono. People are pumped thinking about a Dono with the capability of having both of his hands. That's what Steven was just asking what I was talking about, if he was going to have that splint off by 12:31. I don't know. Here's Antoine getting into the mix. Antoine saying Blake is still a better pure back than Donovan. Donovan is more of a Swiss Army knife. But let me think about that, Antoine. Blake C is a better pure back. So we're talking about the purity of a running back. I'm not convinced. I mean, we're talking about 24 karat gold here, comparing, the purity of both of these. They're both pretty pure running backs. Edwards, I get what you're saying, because when you look at him in even was it Ron Bellamy or was it Mike Hart? I don't remember exactly what coach said, that if they needed him to be a slot wide receiver, he'd be the best slot wide receiver on the team. So, the versatility, you think of him more of, hey, I mean, he's a running back, but in a pinch, he can play wide receiver, where Blake Corum, sounds funny to say if there was no running back position, where else would Blake Corum play on offense or on defense on a football field if it wasn't? So Blake Corum is built to be a running back. The legs that he has on him. I'm laughing. I mean, so it's been a couple of years. I remember seeing the first, you saw Blake Corum, as a freshman, he looked pretty good. And then in the off season, he put a picture up, I think, on Instagram of him with his shirt off, and he was just working out. And that's the first time you saw, the legs on Blake Corum. And for those of you that are just listening on the podcast, I have he has tree trunks for legs. So I think that, I don't know about the purity, but he is built specifically, Corum, to be a running back. Steven, meanwhile, is liking the converted linebacker as a change of pace, power back to complement Edwards. He gets some oomph behind him hitting the line, and that is Khalil Mullings. Not only is a change of pace, but also, remember, a quarterback who will throw a jump pass on a short yardage situation. In a big situation in a big ball game, he'll just jump up at 6'2" and throw the ball to the tight end. Still amazes me that play was put in and it was actually called and that it worked. I mean, all of that, they put it in and they called it, and then they did it with this particular personnel, this specific player, and then it actually worked. It all still is, that part is shocking to me. Yeah, Mullings now, Mullings, who knows what Michigan's going to get with the portal. They were in, I don't know, for a second with the running back from Wisconsin and Allen, but now that Luke Fickell went there, and it seems like Allen has said that he is staying put in Madison. So who knows where else Michigan. There was a Stanford running back that also they were linked to, and there'll be others. I mean, it's the one thing about transfers now, and certainly graduate transfers. Michigan, considering that they brought in Olo Atimi and then Oki. I mean, they're the top team in the Big Ten. They're a championship team. They're a team that can have an opportunity. You want to try to win a championship. You go to Michigan and see if they'll have you. These are not things that were being said 2 years ago, and even last year you could say it was a one-off. Ohio State fans are saying that's a one-off. Michigan winning there, they can't say that anymore. Michigan has turned the Ohio State series around in their favor. And that might be the sweetest thing to think about on this December the 7th. Because we don't need to revisit the history and go through it year by year. Suffice to say, it was not going well. But also, the way that this series has gone, one team has the upper hand, and they have it for a long time, and Michigan has turned it. And so if you wanted to say that you think now Michigan is going to go on this incredible run against Ohio State, where, if we were just being honest, we'd say, Michigan, if they won every other year, if they won 2 out of 5 even, that would be okay. But now, if you said you think Michigan's going to win 4 out of 5, that's not crazy talk considering how this series has gone. Now, you might want to say, well, what about recruiting? That's a fair point. What about the NIL? That's a fair point too. But we don't know what Michigan has in store when it comes down to recruiting and name, image, and likeness. We don't know. A little bit of mystery there. I think that they've earned a little goodwill and a little patience to see how they're going to do there. I know that sounds a little bit like, I'm on the Michigan staff, or, Ward Manuel has, told me, go ahead, how about give us a break? But no, that's just being in the position that they are. Let's see how it's going to go. Marcus is talking about Edwards' health. Yeah. Football players, they need to stay out on the field. I'm with you on that. AJ, Michigan needs to use Mullins more. Then Donovan is good, but he's injury prone. You can't use him like Blake. Yeah, I'm not ready to say, like football, you get hurt. So, all right, Donovan got a little, guys get nicked up. I mean, the running backs get banged up. That's why it's nice to have 2 and 3 running backs. But it's a tough position. Khalil Mullings can give Donovan Edwards some relief on the short, bruising runs. Yeah, Richard. If you go back and watch the Purdue tape, and I encourage you to go back if you have DVR'd Purdue, Ohio State, and watch these games again. Yeah, the uncertainty of watching something the first time live, this can't be duplicated. Going to the game, actually, there's nothing like it. But it's pretty satisfying going back and rewatching these games, putting it on like, wow. But what was my point? My point was about the running back position. I was watching Edwards, and you can say whatever you want about him, what kind of back he is, injury prone. He was lowering his shoulder. He was finishing off runs, and he was falling forward. There's some backs. Barry Sanders was great. He's one of the greatest running backs, if not the greatest running back of all time. One of the great skills that he had, he never really took any shots. He was good at getting down, and kind of spin him down to the ground. Nobody was ever lining him up and popping him. When you're a physical running back and you're lowering you get your pad level and you're finishing off the run, it's a great attribute to have as a running back, a physical running back. They say they're falling forward, they're finishing off runs. Donovan Edwards runs like that. And in the Purdue games, if you look in particular in the first half, Purdue was coming up, lining them up, boom, they were giving him everything. They were taking the 2x4s and they were slamming him. I just thought, wow, man, this Purdue defense, they're smacking him. I mean, they're really letting him have it. And every time, you can see the hits. I mean, I was wincing a little bit. Edwards just popping up. His teammates pulling him up. And that was the whole thing last year. Everybody's like, he's a little bit of a finesse guy because, he's so good. Kind of like a wide receiver at running back. And you think, oh, those guys are going to get hurt. And in those first couple games, the easy games, Donovan Edwards was like, give me the ball. I'm running up the middle. And he was running like a fullback. Plowing into guys, looking for the contact. And that's one of the things. You go back and watch him. Sure, when he was doing what he was doing against Ohio State, 75 and 85 yards, he was just getting beyond the line of scrimmage and then showing his speed. Bye, goodbye. But against Purdue, that 60-yarder that he had, he showed that great move at the line. And then the touchdown run that he had from, a 27-yard touchdown run in the second half where he broke 6 tackles. He made a guy miss in the hole that was right there, and he made him miss. And another guy was coming in, he kind of sidestepped. Then he got into the second level, and it was like Superman stuff. He pushed this guy away, and he threw that guy seemingly with his left hand and then his right, and he zigzagged through, stepped over another guy, and then finished like bounding or pinballing off 2 guys into the end zone. It was legendary. They talk, what are those things called? NFTs? Is that where you get the video and you get your own? I would love to have a NFT of that touchdown run from Donovan Edwards back in the studio here in the Peach Mountains and just have that thing running. That was one of the great runs in Michigan football history. And I admit, I have said one of the greats in Michigan football history a lot this year, but it's this kind of year. Michigan has had a banner season. They've had one of the great campaigns ever in their storied history. And a lot of the players have had all-time great plays, great moments. And it has been some of the best in Michigan football history. Because at times I feel like, wow, I'm seeing a lot of, well, it's one of the great, but the thing is, it's true this year. How about that? All right, a couple more here. As we talk about Donovan Edwards and his health, there's Josh, who says, if you were advising Blake Corum, would you have him come back or go pro? That's a pretty good question, Josh. First thing I would do is I would go into Jim Harbaugh's office and say, look, if I run, 4.445, I'm probably in the second round range, could be third round range. It's about between $4-5 million guaranteed. I would say, what do you guys got for me here at Michigan in terms of name, image, and likeness? And I think this is the thing that I'm paying attention to. I know a lot of other people, myself included. Michigan's not doing anything in recruiting. They can't get a 5-star. How can they? Well, this is how they can do it. They might not be able to give $6 million to Blake Corum, but can they find 2 or 3? And so my advice would be, Blake, I don't know, how much do you like college, and how do you feel about $2-3 million? And sure, if he runs really well, they get out there and you think about maybe he thinks he would be picked higher, which obviously would be much more money, but also these, backs, I haven't looked specifically what the pro guys and, draft gurus have said. I'm just thinking myself, second or third rounder. So I'm waiting to see what kind of name, image, and likeness money Michigan is going to throw at me. It's the same thing, which we're going to get to with the linemen coming in. Both Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinter could go pro. Those guys both seem like they'll be second or third round picks. Is Michigan ready to say, hey, here's $2 million. Here's $3 million. I know that all sounds like, what are we talking? We're talking about not giving signing bonuses. We're talking exactly what Jared Wangler said last year in the summer when he put out a tweet about, Michigan's not getting involved in the signing bonuses and upfront money. That's a no-no. But what Michigan is going to do, they're going to pay off the guys that stay and that are on the team, and they're going to give them 2, 3, 4 times the amount of money than guys are getting that are, out there, looking to be on the take before they ever play it down, or looking to get paid before they ever play it down. This is Michigan. Is Michigan ready to, come to the table with big money for Blake, big money for Zinter, big money for Keegan? They, Jared Wangler's not the, the mouthpiece for the entire university or anything, but that made sense to me. It also makes sense that if you are going to die on the hill of, we're not just getting involved in a signing, well, you're not getting any top players. They have earned the position that they're in, and teams, nobody cares that they're getting money. Nobody. And nobody's doing anything about it. So you could choose to get involved with it. You could choose the way that Michigan is. But at some point, and this is what I'm ready to find out. And again, I'm giving Michigan the benefit of the doubt. I'm playing the long game. I'm actually letting them sacrifice a recruiting class here. You might think I'm crazy. You might think I'm soft, all of those things. But, Michigan's got a plan. Let's see them execute it. Let's go. It's a good question. Do I think Dono straight speed has got to be 4.2? I don't know. 4.2 sounds crazy. Sub 4.4. Ooh, here's a comp. Alvin Kamara. That is on my list as a comp. Let's see what Antoine is saying. Donovan is good, but he's not a natural running back like Blake. He doesn't know how to find a hole as good or set up his blocks or run through his tackle shed. I disagree with that. I think you and I could watch the tape together. I think Donovan does a lot of setting up the blocks. I think a lot of Donovan can cut and run the daylight. I think Donovan can do all of that. Again, I think that the way that Corum is built and the success that he has had and that Edwards could be a wide receiver, I'm just saying, like, that's what I think, not specifically you, Antoine, but I think Donovan Edwards has everything that you want, all the natural ability, all the cuts and physical ability of everything that you want for a running back. I disagree with you on that. Okay. We've looked at some of the particulars here. If you're just joining us, Pro Football Focus had Edwards 145 yards after contact. We're asking you how good he could be. You look at the tail of just his rushing this year, in particular these last two games with 185 and 216. On the year, 11.3 average in the receiving game, those two touchdowns that he had, receiving as well, 17, 192, and 2. That sounds like that could be a 2-game total for him. That's for the season if they utilized him more in the receiving game. Here are my comps for Donovan Edwards, the sophomore running back from Michigan. I agree with the Alvin Kamara, the Saints running back. There's a running back for the Dallas Cowboys currently named Tony Pollard. And Donovan Edwards reminds me a lot of Tony Pollard. If I'm looking for a specific Michigan running back, Tyrone Wheatley. When Tyrone Wheatley would get the ball, and, I don't know, the coach and a lot of you guys might not be old enough to remember old number 6 from Robichaud running for the Maize and Blue, but when Tyrone Wheatley would get into the open, he could fly, and he ended up having an excellent NFL career. And, Tyrone Wheatley, when he could have went pro and been a first-round draft pick, held a press conference, and everybody, myself included, said, he's gone. You understand. He's a running back. He's going pro. And Tyrone Wheatley said, I'm coming back to play for another year at Michigan. It was a great news conference. Donovan Edwards reminds me of Tyrone Wheatley. And he also reminds me of a former Heisman Trophy winner that played for Pittsburgh, who went on to the Dallas Cowboys and is a Hall of Famer and is one of the great running backs of all time, Tony Dorsett. Dorsett, Wheatley, Kamara, and Tony Pollard. Those are the comps that I have for Donovan Edwards, or as he's been called here today on the chat, Dono. Steven says he was targeted at least one pass in the championship. I think more than one. I think you're right. Money says Blake is better at reading the line of scrimmage and zipping through a gap. He's also better at freezing a linebacker. Donovan is definitely faster once he hits the high gear. What game did he get his hand injured in? Well, he didn't play against Illinois. How much did he play against Nebraska? Let's just go back and look at the tail of the tape of these games. 2 carries against Nebraska. I'm going to say that he did it against Nebraska. Or wait, maybe he did it in the Rutgers game. And then could he have done it in the Michigan State game and still run for 100? No, I think he did it in the Nebraska game. People who watch football and see it carefully know what I'm talking about. Yeah, Antoine, I like that you, stick to your guns and that, you're willing to, tell an expert like me that, I need to watch the games and, take it from football people. I'm good with that. I like that kind of confidence that you have in your ability to analyze the game. Meanwhile, I have my own confidence And I don't mind butting heads and having a little bit of a disagreement. If everybody just sat here and was taking bouquets and just throwing them at Donovan Edwards and just saying, oh, yeah, this guy is the greatest thing ever, and nobody said anything about, any kind of different opinion, it wouldn't be all that fun. I like a diversity of opinions. Now, not just to be argumentative or anything, but you have your opinions and you're very confident in them, and I am glad that you are. Let's see what Blake says. Donovan is a good player, but Blake is a better player and is a better fit for what Harbaugh wants to do. Harbaugh loves the 5 to 9 yard carries that eat up the clock, and Edwards does not get that often. Yeah, well, I like that one, Blake. You're like, hey, Donovan, stop ripping off these 75 and 85-yard runs. Let's go ahead, maybe go down after 5 or 9 yards, get them in 5, 9, 10, 15, 2, 5, 10, instead of like, hey, 75, 85, stop running, running away from everyone. I like it. Sugar Shane. The Don with one hand is the best running back in the nation. Who says no? Antoine? Antoine doesn't think he's the best running back on his team. I agree with you, Shane. We have 2 games of sample size, which is a small amount, but we also, let's be honest. If Donovan Edwards was given 20 some odd carries against Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn, I think he could have run for 1,000 yards against those teams. Maryland, he had last year 170 yards receiving against the Terps last year, including a 77-yard touchdown. So, Iowa had a great fumble recovery against Iowa. I'd have seen what he would have been able to do against the Hawkeyes, but you just keep going. He had 173 against Penn State, which was supposed to. Was it Urt Meyer who was in there like, they're not going to be able to run against Penn State? He did. 15 carries for 109 yards against Rutgers. I mean, what are we talking about here? And yeah, with one hand, he did 200 yards in his last 2 games as a starter. I don't know. We're watching something pretty incredible here. And I know Blake did it over the long haul, and there's nobody that likes Blake Corum more than me. But I also am appreciating what I am seeing here with my own 2 eyes with Donovan Edwards. And what I am seeing is greatness. That's what I see. I see greatness. Let's see here. Antoine wants to keep arguing about it. Let's do it. If you notice, Blake gets 5 without blinking. Donovan runs depend more on one long run. He's not consistently getting the yards like Blake. Yeah, well, I guess it's a matter of what you like. That gets back to you want him in, 2-3 yards, 3-4 yards, 2-3-4, 2-3-4, or do you want to see 1-2-3-50, 270, 75, 85? You know what I like? I like explosive plays. I like big runs. I like chunk plays. That's what separates players and teams, ones that are able to get explosives. And Donovan Edwards, if I didn't like the nickname of Dono so much, I might just call him Mr. Explosive. That's what he is. And Donovan Edwards, I think he has demonstrated in these games right here his ability to take the ball, and if you need a yard, he'll get it. Now, If you need a yard, he'll get you 75. If you need 5 yards, he gets you 85. I mean, what are we talking about? Donovan Edwards is running too fast and scoring too many touchdowns too quick. That's the argument on the other side. Oh, come on. There's Lyle, kind of agreeing with the crew here today. Harbaugh's offense requires a power back. Edwards is a home run hitter. Yeah, I guess you have to go back and watch a little bit more of that Purdue because, he was powering his way, finishing off. He's not, he's a finesse back who can run with power. That's what I see from Donovan Edwards. It's not like he's, built like, rail thin. He looks like an NFL back. He looks like a great college back. I see no issues. Certainly you need another back, and the part about, Harbaugh, him liking a bigger back that can go out because that's what, Harbaugh, he just likes that. That's kind of his MO. David saying, wasn't Donovan a really good linebacker too? He reminds me a lot of McCaffrey. His Christian McCaffrey, I think you're talking about. His hands are incredible, and the guy is tough. Christian McCaffrey is a good comp because McCaffrey is tremendous in the receiving game. I can tell you this. Let's. I don't know if we can meet halfway or not. If we say Blake is more fit for the Harbaugh offense and for the college, as a college running back. But Donovan Edwards is built more like exactly what they want, and his game overall is what they want in the pros. And it is like Christian McCaffrey. You can throw Donovan Edwards, the ball 9-10 times. You can also, give him 15-20 carries. Let's do it. Now, I thought Michigan should have thrown the ball more to Blake Corum this year. Remember, they did it finally. I say finally. It was the first screen they threw all year long to Corum back there in their own end zone against Illinois. What did he do? Zipped up the sideline for like 40 yards? They were waiting on that one. They were waiting on that one all day long. All right. And people are fine with my comparison there. All right, we could sit here, and we have pretty much done this all day long. It's been good discussion. Let's get to what Michigan has done here recently, and that is bringing in an offensive line transfer, LaDaruis Henderson from Arizona State. A lot of things to like about this particular pickup for Michigan. He is a grad transfer. And he goes 6'5", 310. So you look at those measurables, he's been a guard at Arizona State, but he has also played some tackle. In 21, he started all 13 games for the Sun Devils at left guard. In 22, he started a half dozen games before suffering a hand injury. In the pandemic season, he played some tackle, 29 starts at Arizona State. He could play, I just mentioned the thing with Keegan and Zinter. He obviously because he just is coming off playing left guard in his last 2 years for Arizona State. So if Keegan went pro, he can play guard. If Zinter went pro, he can play right guard. If both of them go pro, we'll see. You're going to have some depth, and, he'd probably play guard. Meanwhile, Michigan does lose Ryan Hayes. They do have Jeff Piercy, and they do have Carson Barnhart, and they do have Trente Jones. Maybe Michigan already knows something that we don't about one of those guys getting ready to put themselves in the transfer portal or put themselves in the pros, or at least try to put themselves in the pros. Maybe that's happening. He is a versatile offensive lineman who can play either guard or tackle. And he's got the size. It sounds like a very good fit. I know some people are like, yeah, but this is going to push somebody out if, that they know the talent and needs more than we do. And ahead of, actually they know, people are trying to tell you, well, these guys know. what they need and why they're bringing them in. And you're saying, well, maybe he's just, bringing them in for depth. When you talk to guys, if you're Sharon Moore, I wasn't in on the sales pitch, but is the sales pitch, we're going to need a right tackle because you think one of these guys is bolting? Maybe that's it. You say, hey, you can get in there, you got a pretty good shot. I don't think Michigan is absolutely just handing a job off, and they don't have to. But they can say, look, we're going to have a need, either at guard or tackle. Come on in. You want to win a championship? You want to be part of something great? This is what's going on. So it's a real nice pickup for Michigan. And the only thing here is we'll just have to see where he ultimately ends up on the line. Now, this was something that I mentioned yesterday that I wanted to get to. And this is from the executive director of the Senior Bowl. He's a Michigan alum, Jim Nagy. And Jim Nagy is really important from now into the Senior Bowl. He's worked there, and he's been in football for a long time. So I found this this tweet to be interesting. And for those of you who are listening, I will read it. Jim Nagy says, money being thrown at college football players in the portal this week is incredible. Have heard upwards of 5 million plus for some skill players. It has considerably thinned out the quarterback class for the 2023 draft. It's interesting how, there was a lot of money last year, and the guys don't have to tell how much money they're getting. And then meanwhile, you have other people saying like, hey, he's getting this. And was he really getting that? And then, guys can just take off. It's a crazy situation. People that I talked about the name, image, and likeness so much all summer that I'm thinking that there's no way that every day I can sit around talking about NIL again. But it is fascinating because there's a lot of just conjecture about the millions and, who's getting what and where the money's going. And if Michigan's approach is, they've relied on big money donors like all schools, throughout their history, and they've just been getting the money all to themselves. And when it's come to name, image, and likeness, the people that are just giving them all the money, they just want to keep getting the money. They're like, well, they're going to need to get the money from somebody else. We want you to just keep giving us our money. I understand that. There's a balance. Got to be a balance in there with all of this money just flowing. I'm talking about for Michigan. They just got money coming in, big stacks, big bags of money. They have to figure out how to get some of that money to the players if they want to continue going to championship. They want to go to championship games, and they want to go to the college football playoff, and they want to continue, to try to get the best players out there to be competitive. They got to figure out what to do with these gigantic sums of money that they just are awash in. Now, business, I know that, if you get $1 million one year, you always want more the next year. So they have to figure, they got supposedly a lot of, I say supposedly, they've got people that are very smart in these positions. And, football helps out a lot of different things. How can we say it? It behooves the powers at Michigan to get the talent for the football program in Jim Harbaugh. I say, however they do it. They want to die on certain mountains about signing bonuses and everything else. All right. Like I said, I'm giving them an opportunity. I'm cutting them slack. I'm taking a wait and see approach. You might not. You might be slamming your fist down. You're ready for, you want to see a 5-star. It definitely does this. It puts pressure, whatever it is for them. If they come up with a, top 30 class this year, which doesn't sound very appealing, but if they do it, they sacrifice this year to, get the lay of the land and everything else, they got to really ring the bell next year. And, they may have to have a different strategy. If this was like, hey, let's just see how it plays out, and this is how it plays out, they're going to have to make some adjustments. Now, you might think that's smart business. You may think that's, and maybe it is. It's easy. It's easy from where I sit. Get out there and tell them to start spending some money, start spreading the wealth. It is. It's very easy. What you find, the more money you have, the more power you have, the less, I don't know. Like, let's see it happen. Let's see him come up and do something with it. This isn't correct. Money saying Barry had a bad offensive line. That's not true. Money, you might not be old enough and you might be listening to people talk about the Lions. Barry had a really good offensive line. Now, true enough, one of them got paralyzed. Another one got hit mowing his lawn. Andelsek and, Utley, that hurt him. Lomas Brown was a Pro Bowler. So was Kevin Glover. And those other guys that I mentioned were right there as, top-level offensive linemen. So what you say that Barry Sanders didn't have an offensive lineman is just not true. He had excellent offensive linemen. He had a really good line in front of him. Now, he had a terrible coach, and his owner was the worst in all professional sports, the Fords, and his GMs were all terrible. And Wayne Fontes, who's considered by many Lion fans, because he won a playoff game as like their best coach ever, was a clown. But the offensive line was good. It was above average, so that is incorrect. But again, I don't know. I don't know where you're getting that from. I like talking about Barry, though. I mean, that's kind of talking about Barry Sanders is in my wheelhouse. So anybody that ever wants to talk running backs and talk Barry Sanders, maybe Antoine will get in here and tell me, actually, Barry was, more fit for, a wish. I don't know, whatever Antoine would come up with. Blank says Barry would lose you yards a lot of the way he ran, but then he would hit with an 80-yarder and all would be forgiven. That's true. Barry's, game would be 2 yards, -1, 5, 20, -1, -2, 50. That was Barry Sanders. And it was always the great conundrum. And how to fit Barry Sanders in is the greatest of all time, because if he was having a first quarter of -2, -4, and, the Lions got behind 14, 17, nothing, you got in trouble where you could take Barry Sanders out of the game. And then you had more than one coach who would take Barry Sanders out in goal line situations because you needed somebody. Khalil Mullings would have played in front of Barry Sanders with Wayne Fontes and Bobby Ross as the head coach. They just said, hey, we got maybe the greatest running back of all time, Khalil Mullings, put him in. So it does that part. Barry in short yardage situations, Barry in goal line situations hurts him all time. If you're talking about greatest running backs of all time, it also hurts him with how he produced on the road on grass in the playoffs as well. That's also dings him when you're talking about all time. But I don't like the Lions don't have many things, and they had Barry Sanders. He's got a statue coming. When people say, hey, he's the greatest, don't ever say anything bad about Barry. I pretty much just let people go. Like they don't want to hear. Like a lot of people don't want to hear the truth about, Barry Sanders he's the most electric running back of all time, most entertaining running back of all time. The whole part about when people say, if Barry was behind Emmitt Smith's offensive line, you're a big Lion fan. You don't want to. Those are things people say that, aren't necessarily true. But, do I want to sit around talking about Barry Sanders with, Lions fans telling them that they might not be exactly right? Here's a comp for Donovan Edwards. How about the Kansas Comet, Gale Sayers? Except he can catch the ball better than most receivers. Gale Sayers, the Kansas Comet, and the West Bloomfield Comet. The Michigan is the Michigan Comet. I've seen some tape of Gale Sayers, and I have to say that I think a Gale Sayers Donovan Edwards comp is I see it. I see where you're at, Mark. I'm with it. Now you're going to get the coach coming in here telling you, like, wait a second, I don't know what he would say. Let's see. Yeah, the NIL book is still being written. Here's Money is asking a question. Who is going to replace Olu Oluwatimi? That is going to be number 51. Greg Crippen is set to be the center next year. Unless, they're bringing in this the big offensive lineman that we just talked about. This guy, LaDaruis Henderson. If Michigan did bring back both guards, Zinter, remember, he can play center. Maybe there'd be a competition between Crippen and Zinter if Henderson, stayed at guard. And, so there's a lot of versatility and a lot of different ways things could happen there. But I would think it would be Crippen for Michigan when it comes down to that. We're taking feedback here in the final minutes or so. Antoine talking about Barry Sanders. I can't wait to see what Antoine's going to say about Barry. 20 carries for Donovan, 20 carries for Blake. Perfect load management. Steven was a Bears fan. Ooh. Dono is 4-4, not 4-2. Yeah. I don't know, 4-2. Then some corners. Wait, no, DJ Turner. And it's not even hand time or electric time. What do they call it? GPS time, which I don't know about, how they're, but DJ Turner ran a 4.28 in the offseason. And Turner ran a 4.28, and then it was Harbaugh on one of his Michigan podcasts who was talking about Roman Wilson running right with DJ Turner. And when you say running right with a guy who's running a 4.28, I'm thinking that you must have a sub 4.3 guy in Roman Wilson. But those things sound so incredible, and they say all that. There's a little bit of I'm going to have to see it to believe it. Laser timed, hand timed, GPS, all these different things, 4.28. I don't know, like, look. This is the hope from Westro. Those who stay will be reimbursed. Antoine's talking about I just watch highlights. Yeah, I don't know. Like, you're talking about are you talking about Barry? What are your credentials for watching Barry Sanders? I mean, I don't know. I can say that a lot of times with Barry Sanders, I went to a lot of Lions games with Barry Sanders. I don't know if I ever missed. I missed the Monday night game against the Raiders, but back then for the Lions, if they were playing at the Pontiac Silverdome, which was 80,000, and the Lions were they were a good team, and they had Barry frickin' Sanders, and they couldn't sell out the Silverdome. Sometimes they'd get close, and Ford would buy the remaining 10,000 tickets or something, or somebody else would. And, so then you would be able to watch the game. But a lot of their games, including a playoff game against the Packers, blacked out. And yet there would be bars. This was right about the time that I, turned 21. There would be bars that would show the game, but they weren't supposed to. And they got heavy fines if they got caught showing the Lions game. So you would have to know about the particular bars. One was George's Inn in Ypsilanti. I went in there one time, and this is a, real local bar. You'd go in there, everybody knows each other. I was going in for a Sunday night game, and everybody's like, there's more than what you would think would be at a bar for a Sunday night. Everybody's kind of looking around, and we're like, hey, we're just here to hopefully enjoy some football. Oh, okay, let's go. You tell them you're not cops. But that's the thing. I try to tell people that the game against that was the Brett Favre to Sterling Sharp touchdown. That game was blacked out. So I don't know, Antoine. Maybe you were going down to some of those games, or maybe you were listening on the radio, and I don't know. You couldn't watch Barry Sanders when you only could watch the highlights when he was at Oklahoma State because they were on probation, and so you didn't get to see him. So here's a comp. Marcus Allen with Donovan Edwards. But I don't know. Antoine doesn't like Marcus Allen because he, hung out with the juice. And, Marcus Allen with the USC. He was more of an upright runner. Antoine liked more of, he was more of a, I don't know how you say all these great backs. He was more of a John Riggins type guy. Antoine liked John Riggins a little bit more than Marcus Allen. Allen was a little bit too flashy for him. More of a receiving back, than a Riggins type who was more of a pure running back. Like and he had the hogs in front of him. He just fit that system that Joe Gibbs was running. More than, Marcus Allen reversing field in the Super Bowl and taking on. I mean, that's a broken play. That one really doesn't really count, and that's a highlight in the Super Bowl, so that's not going to count in the coach's book here. Phil says that Michigan is stacked next year. They'll be preseason number 1 and will three-peat. Book it. I believe you, Phil. I do believe you. Let me see if I can screenshot that. I've never tried to do that to the live show. If everything goes haywire here, I'll see you tomorrow. Ooh. Screenshot. Let me smile and do it now. There it is. Wasn't a very nice smile. Venice. Venice only shows up, about once a week. But his emoji game is strong. This is true, Jesse. We are all experts here. This is the expert show. We bring in the experts, and then we talk about it. We're all football fans. That's what we know. And I'm just having fun with Antoine. I'm going to let him get the final word. Nobody's saying that, Dennis, people who watch football recognize what Blake does before you get a long run. Okay. I wanted to let you get the last word on that. Let's see what Shane has to say. He says a better sample size with 15 or more carries. See those. Yeah. Well, Donovan Edwards had 16 and 173 against Penn State. Here's the one thing about Donovan Edwards. I think I could have gained 10 yards against UConn. I think that Shane could have gained 100 yards against Hawaii. So what were we talking about here? Donovan Edwards had 16 carries and 173 yards against the Spartans. He had 15 carries against Rutgers and had over 100 yards. Also had 3 for 52 and a touchdown. Receiving. Pretty dangerous there. And against Ohio State, pretty good. Running out there. If you give Donovan Edwards, if we just looked, I'm going to just say it because I think that, so you had the last 2 that he averaged 200. He had 15 carries against Rutgers. That's going to be the low one. And then he had 173 yards with 16 carries against Penn State. You look at those run defenses statistically, and then you look at the games he's had 15 or more carries. I think Donovan Edwards is averaging like 180 yards in games that he gets, and that's more than 2. That's now 3, 4. We're talking about 4 games, including Ohio State and Penn State, the 2 toughest run defenses. And he's averaging 180 yards if he gets the games that he gets more than 15 carries. I mean, what? That's a little bit of a sample size. And Shane, what are we talking about? Michigan's going to be playing an easy schedule next year. Give Donovan Edwards 15 carries, he's going to average. He can average whatever he wants, 200 yards against these teams. How many yards is he going to run against TCU? Is he going to gain against TCU? I said 250. 250. A lot of those will be highlight reel runs. Let's see. Richard says, I've never heard the word famous OSU Buckeyes until the last 10 years. Made up. I don't know what that means. Sorry. Donovan Edwards says that Blake is the better running back. Yeah, I'm not even arguing. Like, if you're asking me who is the better running back, what I am saying is that Donovan Edwards is more of the prototypical running back that the NFL teams want, and Blake Corum was an MVP and had one of the greatest college football seasons of all time for any running back this year before he got hurt against Illinois, and would likely have won the Heisman Trophy, had a good chance to win the Heisman Trophy. So, what are we talking about here? What we're arguing about. And in Michigan's eyes, they had lightning in lightning, but Corum was their bell cow back. He was the starter. He got the bulk of the carries. And if it was a meritocracy, and sure enough, he was junior to Donovan Edwards being a sophomore, and those things play into it. But if Michigan thought that Edwards was the better running back, they would have had him starting, and they'd had Corum backing him up. So what are we doing here? What are we talking about? We have seen it out there. Don is not only the best back, but he's the best wide receiver. Dono gets 10 more pounds. He's going to be ridiculous. The Don. I agree with this. Initially, Edwards didn't take the time to let the block set up, but now he does. We're talking about another year in the weight room. Edwards could be the best back Michigan's ever had. Yeah. And, Corum had one of the greatest seasons Michigan or any running back ever had. He was on pace for all of that until he got hurt. So we're comparing pizza and hamburgers, blondes and brunettes. This is what we're doing here. Big play, Dono. Let's see if we get some people in here that have not been in. We get some nicknames coming in. The one-hand bandit. I don't know how to say this guy's name. Prodiglazon says, we act as if we are watching both runners in the same situations, but we aren't. The teams, the defenses, the game plans we see them in are all different. And here's the point. Fully healthy Corum, fully healthy Dono. Blake is the starter. There you go. The only real basis for comparing the two runners is in practice. Yeah, well, that's where we see where, how they, who gets the nod, right? So, it's always like that. It's like, we don't know anything. But then some guys, you got to produce on game day. But yes, this is true. This is all true. And Shane, like the run up the second half of the middle, breaking 7 tackles, is all the power you need. Donovan Edwards is from Antoine. Donovan Edwards has one or two powerful runs. Donovan Edwards is not a power runner. He is a tiptoe runner. He really needs to work those chicken legs out. Yeah, like Antoine, I don't really mind. Like, the point about like what Jesse says, they're all healthy. We've seen who's been the starter, and we know that Donovan Edwards, how he's built, and he just put together one of the most prolific seasons of all time. Before he got hurt, like, so it's all there. But knocking Edwards in any way, like, I mean, I don't really see that what you're talking about. And again, look at Alvin Kamara. Look at the Kansas Comet. Look at some of the comps that we have been talking about. Look at Tony Pollard there. Now, not everyone is built like Bo Jackson. Not everybody, can be built like Barry Sanders or Walter Payton. I feel like back in the day, Antoine would be on, Kansas message board saying, we need more of a power back. This Kansas Comet. He's not built for the long. I don't know. I'm just having fun. I am just having fun now. It's all fun. It's a fun time. It's $1.99. Shane, Antoine, pony up some dough. Dennis is working hard. That's right. Pony up. One of these times I'm going to get on there. I better make the call today. I haven't been looking. Shane, I see that, and Antoine's the one that told me, how to work it. I haven't really even gone in there to do anything with it, and I could have come up. My wife did give me this shirt yesterday, and she asked me if I liked it, and I said, well, one that says Lucas Oil Stadium, December 3rd, 2022, Big Ten champs. I said, yeah, that'll look good in the studio. I like it. What kind of championship garb people have? I don't know these answers. I'm looking through. Maybe. Here's somebody talking about these are the tackles next year. Maybe. Like, look, there's going to be movement. Here's the one thing about what's going on right now, and I know this is, I encourage people to sign up with the Mason Blue Review because our guys are they've got one eye on their computer and they got another one on the portal, and they got another one they're talking with. Oh yeah, here's our source. They're on it. How it all falls into place here. If you take NLI and you put it over here, and you take recruiting and you're putting it over here, and you do have the portal, Michigan is a spot that any player that is getting into the portal would want to go. Michigan is in a great spot. In years past, a guy might say, I'm not going to be able to get to a Big Ten championship game, but that's not the case anymore. In years past, a guy might be like, yeah, I want to play in the national champ. You can do that now at Michigan. Nothing's holding Michigan back. Now, transfer credits, there is something, but again, Michigan needs to pick and choose. They need to find their Oluwatimi. Maybe they've done that with Henderson and how he fits in. And Oki. Got to remember, we went the whole spring and summer. And then, really, when did Yabi Oki? It was like a week before the season. Was it game week? It feels like, I don't have the exact time. It felt like it couldn't have been any more than 2 weeks out from the season. I mean, it was August. And Oki's like, I'm in. He's a huge factor for Michigan. Big time factor. I know I'm just kind of going on and on here, so let me try to crystallize my thoughts. Michigan's in a great spot on the field and off the field when it comes to picking and choosing for the portal, but there are going to be some guys when you have this that are going to want playing time and they go elsewhere. In fact, if you just look at the recruiting numbers and the overall commitments that Michigan has in terms of then looking at the roster and fifth-year guys, I mean, there's going to have to be some attrition. There's going to have to be guys going to the portal. You actually, not that I'm processing anybody out and saying hit the road or anything, but I think there's going to be some of the guys that do that. And it's going to be good news for Michigan because they're going to have some numbers and they can go out there and find some different players. The things that we don't know about, name, image, and likeness, and how that's going to factor over the next, where are we sitting here, the 7th? Oh, 2 weeks from today. For the next fortnight, who's flipping, who's flopping, who's taking that NIL money, who's going for transformative over transactional. This is it. We're going to find out if winning takes care of everything. Because Michigan's sitting on the outside looking in for all the top players in the country. They're like, we want to get paid before we ever set foot on campus. And Michigan's going, well, no, you can stay here and you can have it all. And they're saying, we want it all, including the money up front. So how that works over the next 2 weeks, that's what we're all going to be watching. Tomorrow, McCarthy, Dan Marino, Joe Montana, Tom Brady. How Antoine sees them all fitting into the pecking order. We'll find some topics for you. Whatever's going on. We just let it breathe, and whatever happens with Michigan, we put into play, and then we start talking about, and we will do that tomorrow. I appreciate everybody getting in. If you hit that little like button, that helps. Any comments, subscribing to the show, that's huge as well. Any of those tips that you're getting, I think that's also really good. I hope, at one point I could have a big part. Maybe I could get my own NLI going, for the next Michigan running back or something. We'll see how all that works. Until tomorrow at 1:00, everybody have a great day. Bye. See ya.